What's good, my dear language learning master? And welcome to Natural Languages and welcome back to the Language Input Podcast specifically. All right. And well, up until now, it was basically just me talking to the microphone about different topics related to language learning. Okay. But for this second season, I'm going to start interviewing different teachers, language learners, and polyglots from all over the world, to just talk about, like I said, different topics related to language learning, about, how to learn a language, how long it takes, the keys to learning a language, and many others, okay? And from the perspective of, like I said, teachers and polyglots and language learners that really are passionate about the game, about languages. And because I believe it's really helpful, for you watching or listening to this episode, because like I said, we'll be answering, or we'll be talking about the most fundamental topics, the most fundamental questions that most people have when it comes to language learning. Because as I've talked about many times, I believe we can all learn any language when join the process, and it's a real pleasure to you know to learn them and to be able to communicate with people from different countries. And yeah, so for this very first episode, I'm having Ina from Comprehensible Input, for Comprehensible Russian, excuse me. And yeah, she's a friend of mine. She's an excellent teacher. So, I'm strongly encourage you to check out her channel, Comprehensible Russian, here on YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, or, if you're listening to the podcast, go to YouTube, and you'll see that if you're interested in learning Russian, she's gonna help you a lot. Yeah. And yeah, with that being said, let's get right into today's episode, in which, among other things, we talked about, yeah, like, the keys to learning a language, a real approximate estimation on how long it takes to learn a language, and so on, and many other interesting topics. So yeah, with that being said, let's get right into it. Thanks for watching, and let's go, or listening. So, hello, Hena, and welcome, and thanks for coming to the podcast. Yeah, and it's a real pleasure to have you on.
Hi, Alvaro. Yeah, thank you for inviting.
It's a pleasure, like I said. All right, so yeah, we're gonna talk a bit about languages in general, about different resources that we can use in order to learn languages the natural and fun way, right? So, like, first of all, just tell us a little bit about your background in general, who you are, and so on, especially when it comes to languages. But, feel free to share whatever you think is important.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ina. I'm from Russia. I'm Russian, and I make content for Russian learners. And I'm trying to make it as comprehensible as possible, according to Krashen's theory of natural approach and comprehensible input. I've been doing this for about 3 years now. I have my own channel, Comprehensible Russian, on YouTube. That has been there for almost 3 years also. But I've been teaching Russian in more traditional ways before as well. I've graduated from a program for teaching Russian to foreigners. And frankly speaking, from the very beginning, when I started studying, I felt that something is really, really wrong because as a native speaker, I could not imagine how is it possible that people can learn all those tables of grammar. It's just unembraceable. I was shocked, And I thought, oh my God, do they really do it? Do they really succeed in this? Can we do it a bit easier somehow, or a bit more natural? And it was 2012, the year 2012, when I was studying. And at that point, I did not find any information about comprehensible input, about natural approach, but I found this English teacher from the US, I think. Oh my God, I forgot his name. But he is using, we should maybe look up for his name. He's very famous as well. He's a very famous English teacher with a big American smile, you know.
Yeah, we'll look it up. We'll look it up later. No worries.
Yeah. And that was the first little step to the field of natural approach, because he is using different techniques, and I think he has a lot of techniques with TPRS, and so that was the first bell for me to think that there should be something else. Mm-hmm. I think I found TPRS due to him. Then I had my own private, just life happening, and I did not, I didn't make any teaching, didn't give any lessons. I did not work as a teacher. So I came back to it 3 or 4 years ago. And then I started digging and realized that there is this wonderful natural approach that is not so spread over, and which apparently existed at that moment mostly in the US and, in America in general, in English-speaking and Spanish-speaking world. But also at that point, I found Dreaming Spanish. And I was already thinking about how to implement the method. I bought a big whiteboard. I was recording myself with this whiteboard, you know, like more like in a format when you're a teacher in the class. So I was writing something on this whiteboard. And I just did not like how it looks on a video. And I was looking for someone, maybe some other ideas. And I found Dreaming Spanish. And that was the inspiration for the format, how to shoot the videos, how to put cameras and so on. And that was the point when everything basically started. I started actively making videos, and I found that apparently it works with my students also, because I'm using this method in the classes, at the lessons with my students. So that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say that I watch all your videos, and like, honestly, they're amazing. Like, you're helping me so much. So you say you're trying to provide comprehensible input. No, you are actually providing comprehensible input. So like, this is like,
I'm happy.
Like, honestly, to everyone listening, if you're thinking about learning Russian, you know, she's got a lot of cultural videos about Russia, the history of Russia, which I really like. Even creative ideas like Russian recipes, which I find it really, really smart and really helpful, because of like, it's because of the physical part of it, meaning that it's really easy to connect your words with what you're actually doing, because you're showing it, you're chopping the onions or whatever you're doing, right? I really enjoyed your episode about the Olivier salad, you know.
Yeah, the legendary salad.
legendary Russians salad for is it New Year's Eve or
Yeah, for the new year.
New Year's Day? Okay. And by the way, I also found out in one of your videos that you were born in Kazakhstan, right?
Yeah. Yes, I was.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I just remember and I wanted to mention. Okay, so I went to ask you about if you had a particular moment, like sort of an aha moment, that you realized that the grammar approach just couldn't be the way, but you just responded that. I mean, like you just told me that you realized, but I don't know if there was a specific moment or a specific language that you were trying to learn that you realize, okay, this cannot be the way.
By the way, I don't think that the traditional way is not the correct way to learn the language. Okay. I think that anything in life, we have different ways. We have different brains, especially adults. Kids, they don't have any choice. They don't have abstract thinking yet. That's why they cannot use grammar to learn a language. We grown-ups, we can learn some language with grammar, through grammar. We can, at least we can build some concepts in our head. And I'm not totally against grammar. I'm not like putting it away from the picture at all. But it's just that we need to understand to which extent grammar helps. So I don't think it's harmful, learning grammar, but I don't think it is as useful as it was considered to be through all the traditional ways of learning. So when this happened to me, well, as I said, I started hesitating at the moment when I was studying in the university, studying how to teach. But then, and actually at that moment when I was studying, I lived in Dominican Republic for a while, and I picked up some Spanish there, though I was not really planning to. I was not going to stay there. I was just spending some time. But still it happened to me. And then at the moment when I met my future husband, and we went to France to meet his family and friends, as again, I did not have a big plan of learning French. But as I usually say, just French happened to me. I did not acquire French, but apparently French acquired me. Because, this is how immersion works, especially if you want to understand what's happening around you. And especially if you are attached to this environment in this or that way. So if I would be on my vacation, I would not acquire French. But as I had this link, I wanted to understand what those people say because they are friends and family of my husband. This is very important to me. And that's, I think, a very important thing to consider when you're trying to find your real motivation to learn a language. That's a very big question of all the students, how to keep yourself motivated. Just some interest or passion cannot bring you through all the process of thousands of hours of learning. It will help you for a week, maybe for a month, sometimes even just for a day. But you need to have a real deep motivation to go through all of it.
Right.
And at that moment, staying in France for a while, it was not for a very long time, actually. I stayed there the longest for 2 months, but being for such a long time, every day, for hours, every day, among people speaking French and really trying to understand what they're saying. Yeah. Though it was not comprehensible at all. People are just sitting around the table and talking. Sometimes there are some hints what's happening. Sometimes there was a crosstalk because I would speak English to them. They would understand, but then switch to French again. And after a couple of years, you need to understand it's not 2 years of French. It's just 2 years when every year we went to France for 2 or 3 months. Mm. So it means like 6 or a bit more months of intensive listening to French, attentive, active listening to French. I acquired some French. I did not learn any grammar. I bought a grammar book, which is as thin as that. Okay. Very thin, just the very basic grammar without any examples, maybe examples, but not exercises, no vocabulary, nothing, just a bit of grammar. I opened it maybe 3 times. And that's it. So I did not read, I did not learn grammar, I did not study anything. I was just listening, and I acquired some French that now I can understand. I can understand daily conversations in French. Yeah. So at that moment, I thought, oh, that's very, very interesting what's happening to me. And I was watching myself and noticing what's happening to my acquisition process. Because first of all, I noticed sounds. Yeah. Then I noticed some words. Then those words started to appear in my head. I was not recalling them. They were just happening, appearing in my head. And that's all the process of acquisition. That was just curious and very interesting experience. And just trying to remember when it all happened. So it was around how many years ago? Well, several years ago, let's say. Yeah. Several years ago, it happened to me. Then I started teaching Russian. And almost immediately, I realized I cannot do it the traditional way. Maybe a few months, and I started implementing the natural approach and comprehensible input, and trying it on the students, experimenting. Mm-hmm. And I liked how it went. I liked the results, and the students were surprised and sometimes shocked because they did not know the method, and they actually liked how it went. So yeah, that's it. This is how I realized from my own experience, mm-hmm. and plus seeing the results of the students.
Right. And how much they were enjoying the process, right? As opposed to having to go
enjoying the process and having results. The most shocking part is the beginning, usually, because you acquire a lot at the beginning, and then you have this plateau of around intermediate level. You have a plateau, but the beginning is usually very shocking. I had, as an example, I had a German girl, not a girl, but a teenager. Mm-hmm. And she did not learn any grammar. We just spoke Russian right away. I spoke Russian to her. She was trying to understand what I'm saying. And we spoke about her. I asked questions about her life, all her life. So that was the only topic of conversations. And after about 50 hours of lessons, she already talked to me some Russian. Very simple, just some words, little phrases, something that we repeated a lot, of course, about her life. But it was intuitive. She did not think. And well, she spoke when she could. When she had something to say in Russian, she spoke Russian. So yeah, this is how it happened. This is how I realized that it's working, and it made me move on with this method. And now I'm doing everything to explore it, to have more data, because I think we don't have enough data on this method. Mm-hmm. It would be very nice to have more information.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's like what you said about this German teenager and being able to say some basic things in Russian naturally without thinking about it. That's my main problem with the traditional grammar approach. Like, I'm a bit more radical than you are, so I don't think it helps, but that's okay, because I always say that I'm not saying that grammar is not important. All I'm saying is we don't need to consciously study it. Because to me, the thing is that they're two different processes, like naturally acquiring the language and consciously studying it. Because studying grammar consciously, like the traditional way, what it's going to lead to is that broken speech in which you have to think about everything you want to say. That's my problem with it. That it's just a different process. It's just not natural. So I also agree with you that we need more data when it comes to this approach and this idea. But at the end of the day, I look at it and, to me, it's just the way we all acquire our native languages. Like you said, we weren't aware of it as kids, obviously, right? But it's just the way we all acquire a native language. Like, we listen for a long time until we were ready to start speaking, right? And we didn't learn any grammar consciously. It just, it was just through our parents and friends' effort to make it comprehensible somehow, right? Through using toys or gestures or speaking slowly, using simple words, etc. Right? So that's my main problem with it. Well, I mean, that's my main problem. And also, back to the motivation part that you talked about, it just, to me, it just, there's some people who did well in school who, they might stick to it for a longer period, but sooner or later, it's just a hard process, right? So it's like, to me, sooner or later, you're going to end up giving up because you're not enjoying the process and you're not really seeing the results. That I see it a lot with my students, that they feel frustrated because they can't communicate. They have to think about everything they want to say, right? When they're speaking. So it just, I don't know. Anyway, I'm a bit more radical, as you can see, but
yeah, I know. And in general, I agree with you. It's just what I want to emphasize here is that I think grammar is not necessary to acquire a language. Mm-hmm. It is not necessary. So you can do without grammar. If you want to, you can do without it. It's not necessary. Mm-hmm. But as a grown-up, as a person who has, like any adult, who has a developed abstract thinking, mm-hmm. and some people have a very, very developed abstract thinking, and especially some kind of technical thinking. We all have a bit different brains. Some people just want this grammar. They want to study it. They want at least to look in the book. They are very curious. It's a natural interest. And if they have this natural interest in grammar, I'm not against that.
Okay.
Because any natural interest leads you to action. And this is very healthy, I think. Yeah. But you always need to keep in mind that grammar is not, well, grammar alone will never bring you to fluency. Mm-hmm. And plus, you always need to have the very right dose of grammar. I would compare it with spices, like, I don't know, salt. You just use it a little bit here and there, if you want to use it at all. You can open your little thin book of grammar, I don't know, once a month or once in 3 months, mm-hmm. or at any moment that you feel that you have acquired, maybe you noticed something while listening to input, to real language input. You've been listening a lot to it, and then you've noticed something, and maybe you want to check on it. Oh, I think I got something. I think I understood how the past tense in this language works. I think I grabbed it. Am I right or not? And then when you have an approval, maybe from the book, or maybe from your tutor, or maybe from a friend who speaks the language, you have this warm, wonderful feeling of progress. That but what is wonderful about it is that it's you who noticed it. It's you who guessed the rule, and you feel like there is a creative force in you.
Okay.
And it makes you feel very well. So I'm not against having a little grammar book. It's not harmful, but again, the dose is very, very important, that it does not become a poison. It does not make you feel anxious about making grammar mistakes. It should not bring you stress, because too much grammar always brings stress and the feeling that, well, the desperation. Because when you look at those tables, you think, oh, I'm never going to learn all of that. That's awful. Especially when you look at Russian cases. Oof, even I cannot look at them.
Yep.
Yeah, so grammar, yeah, it's a very good question. And I like to compare language acquisition of adults with language acquisition of the kids, but I would be a bit more cautious here. I think we definitely should look at how children acquire languages, and we should learn from them, of course. But I would be a little bit cautious about that, because our brains are a little bit different. Even only this one fact that kids don't have their abstract thinking developed yet makes a big difference between us. So it's something to be considered. Yeah. And we don't know, maybe there is something else that makes differences. For example, I've read recently that kids before they're 1 year old, they somehow, their ear is able to hear more sounds of speech. So when they're 1 year old, they have already acquired the sounds of their native language, of their parents. And so after 1 year old, it's already filtered. Their ears are already filtering out the sounds. I don't know how much this influences our language acquisition as grown-ups. Apparently, we still have abilities to hear different sounds, especially if we are listening attentively. But still, I would be a bit cautious comparing grown-ups and kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking that I don't know if actually having the abstract thinking works in our favor or against us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes it's against us, but we cannot do anything with it. It's always here with us.
Right. And then, like, back to your point at the beginning of the question, or the answer, sorry. Like, that's actually a good point. Like, if they're genuinely interested in grammar because they like it, you know, there's some people who like it, it might be helpful. But my problem is, I believe most people who want to know the grammar, it's not because they're actually interested in the grammar, but because they want to consciously control the process, if you know what I mean. Because we adults, we freak out when we don't have control of any situation, right? We want to have everything under control and so on. So that's what most people are looking for when they're studying grammar. Like, I want to know what he said, and that specific word, which again leads to focusing on form as opposed to focusing on meaning, which is the most important thing, right? And was actually going to help you acquire the language naturally and communicate naturally without having to think about everything you want to say, right? Which is, that again, that's my main problem with grammar. Like, even if it's in little pieces, it's going to lead you to consciously thinking about the things you want to say, about paying attention to specific words or endings or verb tenses as opposed to meaning, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, grown-ups want to have proofs that they're progressing.
Exactly.
And that's a big problem with with the natural approach, because anything that happens naturally does not have any natural milestones, let's say. There are some, but it's very hard to notice them. No one gives you a medal every month. So, and even when you have a traditional book, textbook with a program, learning grammar, we have lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3,
right.
And you can just say, I've made a lesson today. It's great. Well, even if I did not progress in my language, but still I made something. I was productive. This idea that we need to be productive it's not harmful, because this is how we work. This is how our brain works. It's okay. This is what we need. But at the same time, it's a bit harmful for the language acquisition, because we put the wrong accents in the language learning process. Yeah. We are putting too much attention, too much energy into some illusion of productivity, which makes us feel better, but does not make any progress in learning acquisition. For some reason, I've been talking to lots of students, about this, about motivation, about being productive, how to track your progress. That's a big question, by the way, how to track your progress when you're learning a language naturally. And there is this big problem that because of this wish to be very productive, people think that listening is the less productive activity among all. Like, I'm just listening, I'm so passive. I'm so passive, it's nothing's happening, I'm just wasting my time. I didn't do anything today. And this is it's a huge mistake to think that you were passive. The activity is passive, but you need to understand that the brain is making a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
And well, this is how Pablo from Dreaming Spanish made it. He has set the milestones of hours, how many hours you have been listening. I think it's a very good idea. I think this is how you can really track your progress. The question is how many hours do you need to learn a language? That's a question. We have some data from this AUA language school in Thailand.
Okay.
How many hours how many hours of Thai you should have before being this or that level. But practically that's it. We don't have any other data except some personal stories. Maybe someone is tracking his own progress in a little file. And sometimes we share those experiences, those numbers with each other. They all seem to be more or less in the same, the same numbers. But still, it's a bit vague.
Okay. And what?
But that's a good point. This is something that anyone who wants to learn a language naturally should consider. Is that you can have a log file. You can just write it down in any way that is convenient to you. You can write down how much time you've spent getting language input. And then see, this is instead of telling yourself, I've made one lesson today, or I've made 10 exercises this week. Instead of this, you can tell yourself, I've watched 3 hours of the language input this week. That's okay. Or maybe if it's 10 hours a week, that's just wonderful.
Even better.
And you will see the progress. You will feel it. You will feel the difference at some point. Maybe at 50 hours, right. You will say, "Oh, I have 50 hours of language input. Let's look back at when I had 0. What happened?" And then you will understand that you have made progress actually.
Right.
Yeah,
that's I totally agree. That's the thing with the traditional conscious approach is, like you said, you go to a language class on a given day, you work through lesson number 2 and you go home feeling that, okay, I've made this improvement today, right? Or I'm this much better than I was yesterday, right? We all know what that leads to when it comes to actually using the language and acquiring the language. But again, back to your point about how you track it, that's excellent. That's actually what I'm doing. Like, I'll give you an example in a moment. But the thing is, first of all, one thing is for me as a language learner myself, And it's pretty similar to what you said about 50 hours and noticing your progress and so on. Is you can measure it the way you measure with grammar, with the traditional grammar approach, because you don't have lesson number 1, 2, etc. But like you said, if you look at the difference between, I mean, you're going to notice that once you start getting more and more comprehensible input, on day 1, you could only understand like really simple resources. And, you know, when you've been listening to the language for 50 hours, you might be able to understand cartoons or whatever it is, right? And it's just that in my case, that really helps me a lot, because after an X amount of hours, okay, I wasn't able to understand anything at the beginning, and now I can understand things on my own, even if they're like super simple cartoons or comic books or whatever they are, right? But I think that's tremendously helpful, like seeing the progress, right? But I want to ask you, you talked about those numbers. So what are they in your experience? Like there's like the $1 million question, right? Like how long does it take to to learn a language, and what does it mean, you know? Or in your experience, what I'll share mine later, but in your experience, what are those numbers? Approx.
Oh, the numbers. We all want the numbers, but I am going to upset you. There are no exact numbers for the moment. And it depends a lot on so many criteria. What's your native language? What is your target language? Plus, as I've said several times today, we all have different brains. And this difference lies not only in the field of the level of intellect of different people, but even it's not even this, but also something about our psychology. Different people put energy in different spheres of life. Like someone can study for hours every day because this is something that is natural for him. Someone can study maximum 1 hour a day, and then he just wants to put his energy into physical action, for example, like sports or something else. Someone wants to put his energy into emotional life. I don't know, maybe he's an actor and this is how he lives with his emotion. He does not want to study a lot. So we all put energy in different places. And where our attention is, this is where our energy is. So if we are able to put a lot of attention into the language, that's going to be a very different story comparing to other people. So it's very hard to measure because we are all different. We have different goals, brains, circumstances, languages, background, and so on. But if to put this aside and assume that we are all a little bit the same, then very average numbers would be, well, if we are talking about fluency, let's first give a definition to the fluency, because that's a very vague term as well. Everyone understands it in his way. So let's say that fluency in a target language, in a second language, is a state when you are able to communicate with native speakers in daily circumstances, daily situations. Nothing very, very special, nothing very, very professional. We're not talking about that. Daily situations, daily conversations, normal speech. In this case, apparently, it is something between 600 and 1,200 hours of language input.
Okay.
So 600, it's if you are learning a language that is not far from your native language. So if they are kind of in the same group of languages, apparently it takes around 600 hours. If it's from a different group, it's closer to 1,000. And if it's very, very far, a very distant group, apparently it's more than that. I would love to know those numbers. And this is kind of my inner motivation also to do this teaching and to make language content. I would really love to watch people using the method and try to figure out how it really works, how much time it takes. I am planning to make a website that would track time spent getting language input. I really hope that it will work and well, and so I could have those numbers, those statistics, and if I have them, I will definitely share it with everyone.
That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, like, the first point you made is really interesting about people being different, mainly because we might be listening. I mean, we might be watching, or we might be getting input in our target language for an hour. But if one person is really paying attention, like 95% of it might be comprehensible, whereas another person might be distracted sometimes. And even though we're getting exposed to the language for an hour, both of us, this second person is really only getting half an hour of comprehensible input, to put it into simple terms, right? That's a difference.
Yeah, we all have experienced that at school, right? We're all at the same lesson. There are, I don't know, 20, 30 people in the class.
Yeah.
And for some reason, some students have heard everything, understood everything, and some of them just come out of the class with nothing. What is that? It's just because we are not robots. We're humans, and we're different.
Yeah, I know. Like, yeah. And your passion for it does make a difference. Yeah. But yeah, like back to those numbers, and I want to share my experience as well, because I've talked about it.
That would be great.
I've talked about it on my channel a couple of times, but I actually did that with Italian first. When I started learning the language, I started from scratch, all right? But again, like you said, Italian's close to my native language, Spanish. So I was actually able to understand cartoons right away, which is not going to be the case if I were to learn Japanese, for example, right? So right away, I had access to comprehensible input from simple resources like cartoons and so on. But in my experience, because I actually wrote down every single thing I did, like I listened to Peppa Pig for 10 minutes, things like that. It took me around 500 hours of comprehensible input to get to a point in which I could communicate naturally. But again, this is really far from fluency, meaning I have some Italian friends here in Krakow where I live, and around that time, I could communicate them in informal situations, like everyday life topics, right? But still, like a lot of room for improvement. Yeah, and to give you more context, now I might be like, I don't know, triple that when it comes to how much input I've gotten in Italian. And obviously I can communicate in a better way, but still there's a lot of room for improvement. So what I've noticed is from 500 to 1,000, what you said might be the plateau when it comes to being able to start communicating in the language naturally, right? But to really get to fluency, I believe it takes a long time, like way longer than we think, right? Because we live in the era of, how to learn a language in 6 months and stuff like that, right? And to really get to fluency, it does take a long time. But I mean, the good news is once you get to those 500 to 1,000, like you said, you have access to so many new resources and conversations with people, and you might be able to start understanding series. So you're going to be able to get 2-3 hours of comprehensible input a day if you want to, with activities, resources, video series that you're truly interested in, right? Because back to my example, I loved watching Peppa Pig in Italian at the beginning because, I was understanding a new language, and that in itself is always fascinating, right? But to be honest, I wouldn't want to watch Peppa Pig for 1,000 hours, right? To give you an example. But I think the numbers might be around there, but to really, really get to fluency, you need to listen and read so much. Yeah. And last thing, I'm actually tracking my progress with Russian and German now. And in both cases, I've got around 100 hours under my belt right now. And again, I can understand so much more than I was able to when I started, but I can't communicate at all. Besides
100 hours.
Yeah, 100 hours. So besides, just simple sentences like "привет," like simple things, right? So
I wanted. Sorry.
No, yes. Like the last thing is, so I'll go back to you once I keep getting more and more comprehensible input in those 2 languages, because they're different from my own native language, right? It's not like the Italian case. So I'll keep everyone posted on that, because I'm also really passionate about, really getting to know how much time you need and being honest about, how long it took me, because that happened with English as well. After 500 hours or 1,000 or as many as, we don't know, but you might get to a point in which you can communicate, but to really get to fluency, I mean, I can't even tell you how many hours of NBA basketball I watch in English. like games take 2 hours or whatever they're, I've watched so many games in English, and after some point it was all comprehensible input because I understand 100%, right? But until you get to a point in which you can really communicate in a natural way, it just takes a long time, right? But the good news is I'm enjoying the process because I'm watching things I'm really interested in, right? I'm watching things that I was already watching in my own native language, right? Which doesn't require any effort at all from my part, right? Yeah. So yeah,
I wanted to clear up something. When we speak about fluency, there is an important thing to consider. What kind of fluency we're talking about? Is it about comprehending, speaking, writing, reading? What is it about? Is it about everything? Like you can use a language in any way. You can write emails and text messages. You can speak to people. You can take part in conversations, and you understand a lot when you watch TV and so on. What are we talking about? Because when I told you my numbers, usually what I have in mind, it's just because I'm making content and this is my main preoccupation is the level of comprehension. So when I say that in 600 or 1,000 hours, a person is fluent, usually it's mostly about comprehending.
Oh,
Mhm.
right, yeah,
So that's another big topic
right.
to discuss. When you should start speaking,
Mm.
how speaking evolves, develops, um, and when it happens, and at which point should we start speaking, and so on. Because we are not developing different skills simultaneously. And
Oh, yeah.
when you are at 600 hours of a language, of language input, it does not mean that you are already speaking.
Mm.
It means that you probably understand a lot. And probably if someone would push you, make you speak, maybe you would be able to say things in a very simple way. But it does not matter that you are really ready to say something in this language. You feel comfortable, your speech is fluent. It's not at all necessary. So first of all, we need to divide, to make it separate the fluency in comprehension
Right.
and fluency in all other skills. And comprehension is the mother of language acquisition. When you comprehend, you can develop other skills. So it's something to be considered as well, right?
Yeah.
So fluency, as you say, fluency, the full meaning, in its full meaning, of course, it comes later. It's not 500 hours, it's not even 1,000 hours, it's not at all there. Apparently, again, I don't give any guarantees for the numbers because it's not scientific, but apparently we should think more about more than 2,000 hours, maybe 3,000 hours, maybe even 4,000 hours of different kinds of training, getting experience in different skills, so we can actually say that we're really skilled and fluent in the language. It's thousands of hours. Well, there is this theory that you to become a professional in something, you need 10,000 hours, right? Apparently, it's not very far from truth when it comes to language learning. But of course, we need to understand that 10,000 hours in this theory meant to be enough for real professionalism. When you are a very good professional, you really master what you're doing. So yeah, it looks not far from the truth. Maybe it is. So everyone should consider that he needs thousands of hours to learn a language to a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an excellent.
But there is something also to consider. Little thing. Apparently, the progress in the first part comes very fast. So to get to somehow intermediate, this kind of little fluency, let's call it like that, when you understand a lot and you can say something, at least in some daily conversations, simple situations, it comes faster. It does not take thousands of hours. It takes apparently around 1,000 of hours. So the first 1,000 is very important, and it's very exciting because you're progressing radically, dramatically. So it's fun. Then it gets a lot more difficult later.
Yeah, that's an excellent point overall because, yeah, like the first thing, as you said, we're just trying to give people some context about how long it might take, right? But again, it depends on so many things: the language you're learning, your native language, and so on. So we're just giving our honest numbers on what we've seen, what we've experienced ourselves, because even if they change a lot, I think it's helpful to know from a listener standpoint. It's helpful to know how much it might take, right? But back to the point about fluency. When I talk about fluency, I mean output. And so, because, for example, like I said, with Italian right now, I might be at 1500. I stopped writing things down after 500, right? So I don't really know, but it might be 1500. And I understand like 99% of what I'm listening to, but I'm nowhere near there when it comes to my ability to communicate, to my output. And that's the case for all the languages, like English. English, I'd say, is the only one I'm really fluent in when it comes to speaking, to the output part, right? But again, I understand 100%. Well, not, if it's American, probably 100 or 99% because I'm used to the accent. From other places, maybe a little bit less, but I can perfectly communicate.
Or a lot less if it's Scottish.
Scottish, correct? Yeah, but I can communicate in any situation. But again, with Italian or Portuguese or even like Polish, for example, I understand a lot. Like I understand when it comes to daily life, I understand most things. But when it comes to my speaking, oh my goodness, it's nowhere near that part. So that was my point about, those 500 hours that it took me with Italian to get to a point, like that intermediate point that you talked about, that you can just start communicating and so on. But being able to fluently speak the language, like you said, it just takes so much longer. And you need to get exposed to the language for so long. But again, the good news is, once you get to the point, you're not communicating. You're not as fluent as you'd like to be, but because you already understand most of it, if not 95, 98%, you can watch series, engage in conversations, which is what you're doing in your daily life in your own native language. So it's easier from that point of view, right? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's
comprehension again. If you understand what's happening, it's always easier to find a way to communicate your own ideas, even if you don't have all instruments to do it. You are not able to say a lot of things. Still, you can find a way. By the way, that's another skill. That's a soft skill that everyone learning languages should think about, should try developing it. It's simplifying what you want to say.
Okay.
It's using anything you can to communicate your idea, because it takes a lot of time to master the speaking skills. But if you already understand so much, for example, you are surrounded with native speakers, you want to communicate with them, you already understand so much, you want to say something, but you cannot.
Oh, yeah.
You are not that fluent in speaking yet. And here, this soft skill comes in, that you need to try simplifying your thoughts.
Right.
And that's a skill. That's something that you need to train, because a lot of people just stuck in a conversation because they have built a sentence in their native language in their head, and that's it. It's iron. It does not move at all, and they just want to translate it literally, this word, that word, and that word, and of course they're stuck. They are not able to do it because languages are not the same. You cannot just translate the word. And that's something that you need to train your brain. You need to rephrase, to simplify your thoughts, to explain concepts in simpler words. Do I have an example or not? Well, I don't know if you want to say you don't know how to say a speaker.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know this word in your target language, but you can say that, that box that makes sounds and music, and you can connect it to the computer or phone. Blah, blah, blah. You can always play with it. You can always find a way to explain things. Some people do it naturally and very easy, but some people don't. And if you feel that you don't do it, if you feel that you're stuck in a conversation, if you're already at that point that you want to speak, but you cannot, consider training this skill of simplifying and finding different ways to express your ideas.
Good point. Yeah, I think that might be perfectionism, that we want to sound as native-like as possible, which is probably a disguise for insecurity, meaning that, I mean, I've felt it myself. Like, if you try to find the most complex thing you can say, because, I mean, you think it's because you're a perfectionist, you want to sound right, but probably it's because you want the other people to think that you're fluent. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Or, like, probably that might be the case. I mean, I've seen it myself. So, because it might be subconscious, like you want to have the approval of others. That's with the way we've been raised up, right? So it takes time to sort of get away from it, because you want to prove everyone that you're so fluent, or that that you speak, you actually speak the language, right? So anyway,
yeah, that's a natural wish. That's okay, of course.
Right. Mm-hmm. But
that's, by the way, something that we need to learn from kids. Kids do it absolutely naturally. They don't care about mistakes. But it's easy for them because everyone around them, all the adults, when a little kid makes a mistake, everyone makes, oh, you're so funny. But if as a grown-up you make a mistake, you have a different reaction. So, of course, but you just need to find a way to do it. And also, what I wanted to say about kids is that, they are always finding the way to explain their ideas in different ways. They are not limiting themselves with vocabulary.
Yeah.
They just point with their fingers. They use gestures, body language. They are capricious. Sometimes they use their emotions. They use anything they can. And that's wonderful, because communication, language is a part of communicative process. And especially while learning, we need to use all the instruments to communicate our ideas and thoughts. And it really helps, because it does not make you stuck in the communication. It does not make you close yourself. It makes it communication happening. And even if you did not communicate your ideas in an ideal way from the linguistic point of view, but still you get the reaction, and the process is continuing. You are continuing getting more input from those people that you are talking to. That's wonderful. Even if you are almost silent, you still can communicate with people.
Right.
Even if in your native language, people like to to speak about themselves, right?
Yeah.
If you are a good listener, they will think that you are a great partner for a conversation, because you're listening so well. When you are learning a language, if it's not time for speaking for you yet, you can be just a good listener.
Yep.
That's it.
Absolutely.
And the kids, I wanted to say something about the kids as well.
The natural communication.
I forgot. Yes, about natural communication, how they do it. No, I forgot. Next time.
Yeah, but anyway, for them, communication and meaning is the most important thing. And I mean, that's the thing. Just communicate any way you can, and you'll actually get better because you keep getting comprehensible input from other people, like you said. You'll keep getting better, and today you might have to find a way around and use gestures, but a few months from now you might be able to actually use the words that you wanted to use. It's just a process, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So one last question, if you were to start learning a language from scratch tomorrow, how would you start? And you can give me an example, like, because again, it's different if you start you as a native Russian speaker. It might be different for you to start learning Polish rather than Japanese, for example, right? So if you were to start learning a language tomorrow, I mean, you can actually give me a real example of what language you'd like to learn, and what would you do if you start from scratch?
I would find one or two resources that provide comprehensible input, if it is possible, if it exists in this language. I hope that all countries, all languages will soon have creators of comprehensible input content for language learners. They appear every day, so just try finding them, really. So I would try to find comprehensible input resources, and I would just listen to them. If possible, every day. That's a very hard task. Better every day, like better 5 minutes every day than 3 hours on Sunday. And 3 hours on Sunday is better than 1 hour on Saturday. And 1 hour on Saturday is better than nothing. So I would just listen. I would have my schedule according to my circumstances, but the ideal situation is to listen to it every day. The more comprehensible it is, the better. Like, ideally, you should find something that fits your level. If you are at 0, then you need to find someone who is making something for complete beginners, something very clear, very illustrative, easy to understand from context, from visual picture, from the situation. I would start watching, well, if there is this kind of resource, that's already wonderful. If you don't have this kind of resource, it makes it much more complicated. But still, you can try finding the most comprehensible content. It can be cartoons, though not all the cartoons work, really.
Right.
Can be cartoons, but the main thing that you need to look at is that you should stay in a daily life domain. like anything that covers daily life topics, daily life conversations, something that you can easily understand. Even if you are trying to watch a TV show, a movie, it should be something about simple daily situations, like relationships, I don't know, problems with money, with an apartment, problems at work, and things like that. Just kind of sitcoms and simple things.
All right.
Then I would just listen and listen and listen until the point where I understand that I am somewhere at this little fluency level, which means I cannot say anything yet, but I kind of understand quite a lot in those daily conversations and daily situations. At some point, I would start speaking. By the way, we did not discuss this. This is maybe a topic for another meeting. Mm-hmm. Speaking is a big topic. How to start speaking, when to start speaking. On one hand, Stephen Krashen says that speaking will appear naturally, mm-hmm. like some kind of magic. One day you wake up and start speaking. I think it's partly true, in the sense that you, at some point, you just get ready to speak because you have something to say in your target language. It's in your head. And it's already in your long-term memory. The language is in your long-term memory. And it means that you can use it now. And when you feel it, that it's there, you can start speaking. But it does not mean that one day you just start speaking and speak fluently from day one. No, you will need to train yourself. You still have your physical body, you still have your muscles, the articulation muscles. You need to get used to produce new sounds. It's a physical training, mm-hmm. Like in gym. It even hurts. So yeah, you need to train. But it will be much easier when you already have internalized the language, when you already have it here in your mind. It's there. You just need to learn how to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I would listen a lot for hundreds of hours. We don't know exactly how many are hundreds of hours, and depends on the language as well. I would listen for hundreds of hours, and then at some point when I feel like I have something to say, I can say something, I would start speaking here and there a little bit. And what about reading and writing? Probably I would read first and then write. Mm-hmm. Not probably, but for sure, reading first and writing afterwards. But there is another question that Matt from Refold, or Matt versus Japan in past, is saying, I like this idea kind of, but I would like to check it. I think it makes a lot of sense, but it depends on the method you're using learning a language. He says that it's not a bad idea to first start writing and then speaking.
Okay.
Because writing gives you time to think. Mm. and you are not so much stressed. So you can actually use the language that you have acquired to try building nice sentences. You have a lot of time, you're not in a hurry, you sit down and make a little essay about something, or you write a message to your friend, something like that. You even have time to look up for some words if you need them. And I think it's not a bad idea, at least trying. But I think it's optional. You can, because some people, they don't even have in plans writing or reading. They just want to speak the language, that's it. So it all, of course, depends on your goals as well.
Yeah, you mean like writing as your first output as opposed to speaking, right? Yeah.
Or maybe it could be simultaneously.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing, that we need to focus on listening, to comprehensible input, and output will come later on. That to me is key, like input versus output. And then, what you said is probably not that one day you're going to wake up and be fluent. That's not going to happen. I look at it like, you'll get to a point in which little things start to come out of your mouth naturally. Like you know what to say in a specific situation. So it's more of a process rather than just waking up one day and, oh, look what I found, right? I can communicate. No, it's not going to happen. Yeah, just little by little. Yeah. All right. So, Jan, are you learning any language now, or any language you'd like to start with?
I'm in between. Because I don't have any need to learn a language. I live in Russia. I have a French husband, so I've picked up some French. At the moment, I'm thinking about Japanese, but it's been a long time that I'm thinking about Japanese. So maybe I will start one day. For the moment, I'm not in it. I'm listening to Yuki from Comprehensible Japanese from times to times, and I cannot make any conclusions for the moment, but it feels very good. It feels so.
He uses puppets, right? Or is she?
No. Puppets. It's a different. It's a different girl. Her name is. I forgot. Asami. Like immersion with Asami.
Okay, could be. Yeah.
Yes. So there are two girls teaching Japanese. They're both very good. And yeah, it feels good. It feels very good because it's easy to understand. It's nice to listen to. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, if it always feels good to be able to understand a new language, right? Yeah.
It takes time, and I need to put it on my schedule if I want to. And I'm putting a lot of time into making my website at the moment. So we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. All right, Ina. So thank you very much for coming on, and I'll write the topic down for a future talk about speaking. I mean, that you mentioned, because we didn't cover it, in a deeper way. But yeah, again, thanks so much, Ina, and it was wonderful talking to you. And I hope this is going to provide so much value to people listening to this.
Oh, I hope so. And I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to read the comments if it's going to be a video or a podcast. I want to hear the stories of people who watched or listened to this, how their progress went with their languages, if they used the natural approach, if they had something, if they combined different methods. Well, to hear the stories of other people, their experience. And the numbers, if they have the numbers, share the numbers. We're all looking for them. Everyone wants the numbers. Please share your experience.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk about language learning, always.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, like Ina said, either to me or to her, just share your experiences with us. We'll be more than happy to take a look at them. And yeah, it'll be both video, interview, and podcast. So yeah, whatever the platform, we're here to listen to your stories and to answer your questions if you have any. Because yeah, like you said, it's a pleasure to talk about languages.
True.
All right. So thank you again, Ina, and bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Good luck with acquiring languages.
Bye.
Bye.